Hello to you wherever you are around the world. I must say it's appropriate to add Happy International Workers' Day or Midday to you, how you prefer it. I am Emefa Apau. I work with Joy FM, Joy News. I host the Midday News, Newsnight, and The Probe on Sunday evenings on the Joy News channel. I'm also a producer and assistant editor as well. I have the pleasure of hosting this conversation for the next 2 hours or so. I welcome you on behalf of the Africa Center for Economic Transformation, ACET, which is the entity behind the Ghana Compact, which I will touch on a bit more shortly. Well, ACET is also making it possible for this Twitter space conversation, which will be centered on transforming Ghana's business ecosystem. And this conversation couldn't have come at a better time, especially because of the economic conditions and the times that we are faced with as a people, as a society, as entrepreneurs, and as a business environment as a whole. Well, if you participated in our previous conversation on building a secure future for the Ghanaian youth, you would have heard the various representatives of the youth espousing some views on the Ghana they dream of. Well, today, since we are focusing on transforming the business ecosystem, I'll require every speaker, at least, and every participant shortly to briefly tell us about the business environment that you dream of for Ghana. We'll get into it shortly, but maybe a few ground rules. We'll have brief introductions from our speakers, what you do, your background, and then also briefly on the business environment you dream of for Ghana. I'll then walk you through a brief background to the Ghana Compact. We'll then go directly into the first round of questions for the panelists in no particular order, and then we'll follow up. We have follow-ups where necessary, but will be orderly, of course. And I also allow for audience contributions and questions if you catch my eye. Then we'll go through the second round of questions with our panelists, and the cycle continues for the next 2 hours. I promise you it will be an interactive session, because with your input, we can transform Ghana's business environment. And dear panelists, worry not, I'll make room for you to, of course, share your final thoughts at the end of it all. And I'll also ensure that we work within the time limits, considering that it is our day as workers. So at this point, without wasting any much time, permit me to do first names just for today, if you may. I'm sure I have your permission to do that. So we'll get that brief about the outfit you represent, what you do there, and then the business environment you dream of. It's only appropriate that I start with you, Charles, briefly. Your full name, a bit about you, and then the business environment you dream of. Charles, I see that you've unmuted, but we can't hear you. Okay, I'm sure that we'll try and rectify Charles's situation. I think South Africa is not allowing him, but maybe we'll go to Philomena. Charles, I'll come back to you, and the team will help you rectify the situation. Philomena, you can start it off for us, a brief about you and the business environment you dream of.
Thank you very much, Emefa. Hello, everyone. My name is Philomena Jani. I work for the Ghana Enterprises Agency as the Director for Policy Planning, Research, Monitoring, and Evaluation. I want to see a business environment that is capable of attracting investments and also supporting the private sector development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philomena. I'll come to you, Anthony. Hello, Mr. Mo.
Hi.
Hi.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm Anthony, CEO of the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. I serve on the Food and Agriculture Organization Experts Panel on Food Security and Nutrition, and also an expert reviewer for African Union on innovation in agriculture and skills. I'm also the chairperson of the Agriculture Sector Skills Body of Tibet Commission, where we develop all the agriculture curriculums for technical universities and agriculture training colleges. And I served on the School of Agriculture Management Board of University of Ghana and also West Africa Centers of Public Policy. My expectation of this is to deliver a better understanding of the agriculture transformative narrative, bringing on board some innovative ideas and also other intuitive expertise that would help the generality of the public to understand and appreciate the need to invest both in public and private in agriculture and our food systems.
Okay. Well, Anthony, you've taken me into what you're expecting from this conversation. I was actually also asking about the business environment you dream of for Ghana. Briefly, would you want to tell me what your dream for the business environment in Ghana would be?
Well, I dream of a sector where Ghana will start to import over $500 million worth of skills annually in the agriculture sector. I dream of a point where Ghana would overcome over $10 billion of importation of our food in the sector. And I dream about a sector where our technology, machinery, and also agro inputs, 70% will be informed by our researchers and innovators. Thank you.
That's certainly a Ghana we all want to be part of. Audrey, your turn, please.
Thank you very much, Emefa, and good afternoon to all listeners on the call. My name is Audrey Abaka, and I work with Absa Bank Ghana Limited. I'm the head of SME banking, agency banking, and partnership. I oversee over 13,000 small and medium businesses in the bank, and I have a team that cuts across the entire country wherever we have a branch. And in terms of what I want to see in the business environment, we all know that when it comes to economic development in any nation, we say that the SME is the engine of that growth. What I want to see is the financial sector, which plays a key role in enabling these SMEs to thrive, focus on SME lending, and create an environment that makes it much easier for these businesses to access funding without struggle.
Thank you. That sounded like a manifesto that we would all want to vote for. Well, let's bring in Gideon. Hello, Gideon.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And I'm Gideon Benjo. I am the team lead at Gideon. Gideon's is a company that manufactures leather products such as bags, bags, and we've been in operation for more than 10 years. And we are looking for an ecosystem where the youth will be enthusiastic about creating their own businesses and an environment that will make their businesses thrive and also not be scared of operating in a system where there will be political interference.
Thank you very much, Gideon. Kimberly, it's your turn.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kimberly Addison, and I'm one of the co-founders of 57 Chocolate. 57 is the pioneer bean-to-bar chocolate manufacturing company that makes luxury chocolate from bean to bar that is a reflection of African art and culture. The business environment that I dream of is an environment that favors local and indigenous businesses, enabling them to thrive, and an environment where simple processes are no longer complicated.
Okay. Thank you so much. So these are our speakers for today, carefully selected, that cuts across the entire business, environment. And at the end of it, we'll get to transform Ghana's business ecosystem. But let me quickly walk us through the background of the Ghana Compact. If you've not heard of it, I'm sure that after this, yes, sir?
Yeah, Mr.
Okay,
I think you left
Charles.
me out. I haven't introduced
I'm
myself.
sorry, Charles. I was having difficulty with your line earlier. So please take it away, Charles.
Yeah. Okay, so my name is Charles Sodum. I'm the head of private sector development with the African Center for Economic Transformation. As a policy think tank, we focus on driving, supporting African governments on economic transformation. And my work with the private sector is to help actualize these economic transformation imperatives, working directly with SMEs, and also through the evidence we gather, we try to inform policy to reform the business space. In terms of the Ghana we want to see in the future, I think I also want to see a business environment, one that is free from undue political interference and is able to build champions, who will lead the private sector. Also want to be able to see a business environment that rewards efforts, innovation, and creativity, and an enabled private sector that is able to drive the country's economic fortunes. So that's what we want to see in terms of what a private sector should look like in the future.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Charles. I see an AGI account joining. I suppose that will be Setchuma Kwabwa. You may have been sent an invitation to be a speaker. You may want to accept that, then we can have you introduce yourself as well. So whilst we wait for that, I'll walk us through the compact, the background of this compact that will set the tone for the discussion. We know that the compact is an initiative launched by the Africa Center for Economic Transformation for Ghana's political and economic transformation and some partners, and it seeks to set a vision for our nation, outlining potential solutions for the country's biggest challenges, and also identifying targets for tracking progress towards the agreed vision. Well, the Ghana Compact is a consensus-building initiative that seeks to set well-articulated and collectively agreed goals and targets for the country's governance, political processes, economic management, and policies of inclusion for the second quarter of the 21st century. Well, among other things, the compact will be an agreement between the citizenry and the government on the development direction of this country, regardless of the party in power. Well, post-launch, the compact process continues with a series of technical consultations on proposed recommendations to address the challenges in Ghana. So one of these technical consultations focused on enabling the private sector to drive economic transformation. And the Twitter Spaces conversation we are about to have today seeks to unpack the issues and have stakeholders within the private sector share their perspectives and ideas on this issue. And with the introductions and the speakers that we have, you know that the tone has been set and it's carefully selected panel, and we are going to do justice to the topic. So at the end of it, with the objectives, I've heard Anthony's main objective and what he's hoping to achieve from this, but we are hoping to get the players within the private sector space to share ideas on how to better our business environment as a country, and also to seek perspectives on compact target areas with a focus on the economy, gender, and youth and skills. We've already had the youth have their turn, and it's a time for the business people to also talk about how we can improve the environment that we have, especially with the times that we are in. So without much ado, I think Charles would be appropriate to set the ball rolling for us, because you've done extensive work in this area and from ASET. So we can start with this. But before I get into that, I don't know, the business people on here with the tax implementation, today is May Day, is supposed to have started. We've been told by Guta, amongst others, that they're going to pass costs onto the consumers. I was hoping AGI would have joined us by now, so we find out if they are with Guta on this particular move. Let's start with you. From your research and as well as the consultations that you've done so far, what are we not doing right when it comes to being an entrepreneur to be able to grow our businesses?
Okay, thank you so much, MFA. But before I go directly to your question, I just want to give some background, especially as we're looking at this under the compact for Ghana's economic and political transformation. So as some sort of a background, we know it's always been thrown out there that the MSME or the SME sector is really, and the informal sector, it constitutes the most significant part of businesses in the country. But do we truly understand it in terms of the figures? Let me just give you a little bit of numbers, and then I'll come to that. So the space actually represents about 85% of businesses, employing more than 80% of the workforce. mostly in the manufacturing, and also contributing significantly to GDP, about 70%. We also know that our SMEs form 90% of all businesses registered, and they account for more than 90% of employment. Now, the statistics also indicate that if you look at the various categories of SMEs and the kind of types of jobs that they provide, you realize that these are the real drivers of the economy. Now, in the last 5 years, we did some analysis looking at businesses that have been registered with the Registrar General Department, and we realized that the very small businesses, mostly over the last 5 years, every year there's an average of about 100,000 businesses registered, and 63% of them actually constitute the micro, and these people are the ones actually providing jobs for 1 to 2 people. And then we have about another more than 56,700 also registered. Sorry. So what I'm saying is that we have the small businesses actually providing about 1 to 2 jobs, and they contribute to about 63% of the businesses registered. Now, if you look at the potential of what these businesses, these SMEs, are doing for Ghana, the potential that they hold, looking at the number of jobs over the years in terms of the averages, altogether every year, based on the number of businesses registered with the Registrar General, there's a potential of close to 500,000 jobs a year. And this is what really a country truly needs to properly transform. Now, for us at Assets, looking at economic transformation, working with the private sector to really actualize the economic transformation imperatives. When we work with businesses, what we see is that, yes, Ghanaians generally do have there's a lot of entrepreneurship happening around, but most of them are not able to move to the business level. So we try to really differentiate between just entrepreneurship and real business ownership that will truly become formal and drive economic transformation. Now, having said that, when entrepreneurs start businesses and it gets to the point where they truly need to grow, what we've seen is that, one, internally, most of them do not have the systems and structures that make it interesting to drive in the necessary financing to grow. And working with them with the kind of projects that we having under our private sector development, what we're doing is that we're trying to show up the capabilities of these SMEs to be able to grow, de-risk themselves internally. I mean, I know that there's the external risk as well, but internally working with the SMEs, they need to understand that when you put in systems and structures to help you to de-risk and make you more interesting or attractive for investors to put in money for you to grow. The other thing is market intelligence. So this is something that most entrepreneurs, for them to be able to scale to the next level, would need. To really, truly grow businesses, you must even understand at the point whether you're truly ready to grow. So beyond your organic growth, you need to understand that the industry itself must be growing, and once it's growing, then it presents opportunities for you. Now, once you know that these opportunities exist, then you need to position yourself. How do you turn this market intelligence to real growth? And companies that truly position themselves and that position themselves to attract the right kind of partnerships and investment are able to take advantage of these opportunities to grow.
Okay.
Now, beyond that, the external bit, which I know the other speakers might touch on, that it goes just putting your books and your house in order, but definitely the business enabling environment through policies, infrastructure, and and other things could actually help grow businesses also in Africa. So I'll stop here, and then I guess as the others add on.
I appreciate it. I'll come to you, Audrey, because it's interesting to know that 13,000 SMEs you get to engage. At least that's for Absa alone. But Charles made a point about people being in entrepreneurship and the difficulty for them to grow to the business level. Your interactions or dealings with these SMEs, what would you say will be the reason why some of them are unable to get to this business level, or what exactly they are doing wrong when it comes to being entrepreneurs and growing their businesses?
Emefa, thank you very much. So businesses start and they progress from one level to the other. So like Charles said, there are quite a number of these businesses who operate at a very lower level. And lower level, I mean, unstructured businesses. And if for these businesses to get to the level where they get, let's say, investors and banks like us to be interested in their businesses and release funding into their businesses, they have to move to the level where they begin to put structures in place. And Charles mentioned that it's very important because the institutions that they are looking to borrow from are heavily regulated in this environment. And then also, the monies that are available to give to these businesses are depositors' funds. So the banks are custodians of these funds, and therefore, they put in place frameworks that governs the movement of the funds, especially from the banking arena into the business domain. So you will not get any bank that will get up and say that because you need money to thrive and survive, I'm giving you X amount of money. Definitely, there are processes that you would have to go through. There are requirements that you need to meet. And this is where most of the businesses struggle. Access to funding has become, a big issue for conversations. And I hear it most of the time. The issue is not about availability of funding. The issue has always been the ability of these entrepreneurs or enterprises or SMEs to access the available funds in the system. So it's important, in terms of what they are not doing right, it's remaining at a level where you are unstructured and also not availing yourself to building your business acumen and also understanding some level of financial literacy to help you understand what the banks look out for to be able to support you. If you don't avail yourself to do that, it will be tough, okay, to bring yourself to a level where we will be interested in you. Emefa, in my setup, we have partnership with MasterCard Foundation where they help us to build capacities of these entrepreneurs. And I can tell you that there are businesses that refuse to attend the financial literacy programs that we have in place for them. Some of them do avail themselves, but the majority, especially the micro and the small ones, it's tough for them to leave their businesses to go and sit in a classroom to learn for 3 days, to sharpen their business skills and also get to know what structures are necessary to elevate your business to the level where we can be interested in you. So these are some of the things that are really hindering these businesses to move to the level where investors and banks like us can be interested in them.
Well, the impediments also that people say the banks put in your way, it's something that you would have to chew on. I'll come back to you on that. But Gideon's has been in this for 10 good years. In spite of Audrey saying that some businesses are unstructured, there's access to funding. It's just the funds are available and the access is the issue because some of these businesses don't meet the requirement. How has Gideon's been able to do this for the past 10 years, you'd say?
Thank you. I think when I was listening to the two speakers, I could really relate, especially sometimes when we go for trainings and or we are going for pitch events and businesses are told to provide their financial statement. Then you realize that it takes a week or two for them to really prepare those things. So I could really relate with what the two speakers just said. I think that when I started off, I have gone through the various stages of acquiring capital for my business, right from friends and family, through grants, through soft loans, and I think I'm now at the process of trying to get investors. So then it's been, and at any stage there has been a learning experience for me. With friends and family, they don't really care so much about your structure and everything. I think they just feel that, okay, well, this is a business, this is a young guy doing a business, and I feel like I want to support. I think one thing I did for myself was when I got introduced to this incubator hubs. I think they are a very important partner for any business or any entrepreneur here in Ghana, where, because most of the time entrepreneurs just bring out businesses not because they want to create businesses or jobs. It's because of how our systems here are. So they are creating businesses out of necessity. They didn't find jobs, and so they thought that, okay, they can just find something to do or create a business, and so they just create a business. And coming from a background where you didn't do anything related to business, then you realize that it was very important for me to join this accelerator hubs to really put me in perspective when it comes to businesses. Through that, we were able to develop a lot of things for ourselves, especially when it came to bookkeeping and all that. And I also want to say that there are other development agencies. I would like to say GA. They also offer business advisory services for small businesses like ours. So that has been my experience when it comes to the funding side. So we moved from friends and family to grants. What I realized with grants was that sometimes they come as high-ticket grants. And a business of mine, maybe when you are not able to make a turnover of a certain amount, you are not able to assess. But I think what we did as a business was to liaise or partner with some of these accelerator hubs who had access to those grants. And we were able to partake in some of those monies that they had. That has been the grant side. When it came to trying to assess loans, it took us close to 6 to 9 months to assess a loan. And I think that the processes were tough, but I also feel that it was a good one to really strengthen some of the internal structures that we have. And one thing I would say that what that thing taught me was to pass every amount of money I get in my business through the banking system, so that you're able to prove to them that these are the revenues that you've had so far. So
okay.
I think,
Interesting. 6 to 9 months. That's a whole full-term pregnancy to be able to get funding. Well, it takes a lot to wait for that. But since Kimberly is also on, co-founder 57 Chocolate, you get to hear all the stories about how business people have been able to survive and be able to do it. But really, the question that I want to find out from you, or what I really want to know, is it easy actually doing business in Ghana? Because I know that you're hoping to become a multinational organization. You've seen it and how you've been able to do it. But would you say it's very, very easy to do business in Ghana?
Hi. So definitely not. It's very challenging to do business in Ghana, but it's possible. It takes a lot of hard work and discipline, and definitely putting the proper structures and systems in place, from your finances to, if you're manufacturing, to your documentation, to having systems in every aspect of your business, whether it's in production, whether it's in administration, whether it's in HR, having those structures and systems in place. And that takes time, effort, and energy. And as an entrepreneur, one of the best advices that I got was to make sure I'm working on my business rather than in my business, because it's easy, especially here in Ghana, given the challenges of, lack of human capital. It's easy to want to be working in your business rather than on your business. But if you're working in your business, then you don't have the time to put those structures in place or to monitor those structures. And so that's something that's very vital to do. But overall, like I said, it's not easy doing business in Ghana, but it takes patience and having systems in place, and also training and investing in your team members to make sure you're having the right team to help you support your business.
Okay, I'm sure you briefly touch on access to funding. It's come up a lot, at least we've heard Kedron also talk about it. How about 57 Chocolate experience when it comes to access to funding? Briefly, under a minute.
Yes, when it comes to access to funding, so far we've done family and friends, and then we've also done the grant process as well. And equally, like other people have said, in terms of like loan and seeking investors, we're getting to that. In terms of investors, we're getting to that stage. We still want to make sure we're building the proper foundations. That way, when we invite investors in, everything is settled.
Okay. Well, Anthony, you were earlier dreaming about a sector where we import less in terms of skills and also products as a whole. But really, do we have the policy interventions? Do we have the incentives that are needed to truly grow the agribusiness space as we have it, you'd say? Okay, it doesn't look like I have Anthony. Did we lose Anthony along the line? Okay, it appears we did. But thankfully, Philomena is on with us. You have been providing some kind of intervention for some of these businesses. But hearing from the business people who are with us, it appears that largely it's been family and friends that has been helping all through. And if it takes 6 to 9 months for access to grants and loans and funds to be able to grow businesses, what would you say will be the story of the Ghana Enterprises Agencies? You have been able to interact with some of these businesses. What's the story so far when it comes to funding for some of these businesses?
Thank you very much, MFA. As you already know, the Ghana Enterprises Agency is a government institution mandated to promote and develop micro, small, and medium enterprises across the country. And we provide business development services, that is the non-financial, and then financial support to MSMEs across the country. And we provide soft loans and grants to these MSMEs. In fact, I agree with the earlier speakers on the informal nature of especially the micro enterprises across the country. So sometimes getting access to commercial facilities or commercial loans is very, very challenging for some of these micro, small, and medium enterprises. So we at Ghana Enterprises Agency, we try and then develop the technical capacity of these MSMEs before we provide them with funding. And we have been giving grants from the time COVID hit or before that to MSMEs. We have access to funding programs, for instance, under CABAS, which is a Government of Ghana initiative. We supported businesses to access grants and also soft loans with an interest rate of 3% for the soft loans. And then we also have the COVID-19 Recovery and Resilience Program for MSMEs that was funded by MasterCard Foundation, and the interest rate over there is also very low. We have the EDIS loans that we give to MSMEs and various and other grants that we churn out to these businesses, in addition to capacity building programs. Apart from that, we build the capacity of some of these businesses who approach us to be able to access funding from the commercial banks. And normally we support them with management training, financial literacy training to be able to prepare their records very well and operate active accounts to enable them access some of these facilities. So I believe that with a lot of capacity building and training, some of these micro, small, and medium enterprises in the country will have a mindset shift and then overcome some of these challenges to be able to provide, to be able to access the support from the environment. Because you know that government alone cannot provide the resources. It is unsustainable if government would always have to provide the funds for these MSMEs. But when we build their capacity to a particular level, we believe that they'll be able to put in place the various things that these banks require to be able to access funding to enable them grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philomena. I don't know if you have figures in terms of how many of these businesses that we've been able to support since the GEA was set up, because in our interaction with many of these businesses, some of them even shy away from approaching some of these government agencies because it does appear that you must really know somebody well placed either in the government or really well placed in the GEA for you to be able to get access to these fundings. And how cumbersome is the process, you would say, to be able to get it? So maybe you can give us some assurances in terms of, do I have to know somebody really high placed before I can get access to it? Gideon is here, he tried. So maybe after you, we can hear from him if about the process, really. Tell us, do I have to know someone? And really, what's the process?
I'm aiming for you don't need to know anybody to be able to access the funding. You have to go through the process and provide the right information as required by the institution. So to enable the MSMEs do that, we have 291 business advisory centers across the country. We are in all the regions. And we also have 37 business resource centers. And normally when we place a call for applications, these days we use internet, the web, to deploy interventions to MSMEs. And you realize that some of them have technical challenges when it comes to the use of technology to access some of these facilities. So the BACs, or the Business Advisory Centers, are there in the district with the SMEs. They can walk into our office, and then our officers will be ready to support them to access information and also apply for funding that we roll out. Normally, we also, because of internet challenges at the rural areas, apart from the web, we also print hard copies of these application forms for use by the potential beneficiaries. And we've taken out the human face. Wherever you are within the country, you can go on the web and apply. When you apply for a facility, there's a scoring matrix within the system. So the system will pull out those who qualify, and those who do not qualify, would not be consulted. After that, we do due diligence to find out whether what you put in the system is right. We come to your business area to do an assessment, and then from there we have a committee, that's the grant committee, from different institutions, from the ministry and other places, to come together and work on these applications. So in fact, if you talk to some of the people who have received funding, they will tell you that they didn't know anybody, or from the beginning they have a mindset that it is whom you know, so they may not go far. By the end, they get it and they become very happy. After getting the funding, we also ensure that we monitor you to ensure that you are using the funding for the intended purposes.
Okay. Well, Gideon, I think this will be a bonus question for you, just to briefly clarify for us, because you've had an encounter with the GEA, and briefly share with us from what Philomena has been saying, other business persons on would want to know. Did you know anyone? What really was the experience? Did you go far? Did you even get the funding?
That's a tough one, but I think I think that I've had opportunities of accessing some of their funds, and with some too, I didn't sail through, like she mentioned. Maybe some of the processes I didn't go through, and I also look at the ticket, the money, the amount involved. But I think that they have, aside the ones given to them by either MasterCard or World Bank, they have others like WeDo, which is I think that one is in collaboration with GIZ or something. That is one of the ones I've assessed, and the Cabas is also one of the ones I've assessed. Other ones I didn't really qualify. I don't know if I didn't qualify or I didn't get. But as to whether to say I know somebody there or not, I think that every business will have to register with the district, and you have to register with the district. So I was with the Adenta district. So during the Cabas, I think I was one of the people that qualified at the district level to assess
Okay.
some of the grants. So I think that's what I'll say on that. Yes.
We appreciate that. Yeah, we appreciate that. But if you are on and you want to make any inputs or you have questions at this point, because I think we've all done the first round of questions that we'll get into, I'll come to you, Audrey. I was asking you to ponder on the impediments, and then also whether there are any structures within the financial setup that needs to change, well, to allow financial institutions to better assist businesses, at least. And that's one key thing that runs through. Now, but knowing that the funds are available even within the times that we are in, but it's just the issue of structuring, or these businesses are unstructured. But I don't know, John, if you're with me, if there are any questions, please feel free to draw my attention. I'm hoping we could have this as very interactive as possible, so we can have a lot of takeaways. But if there are no questions so far from some of our listeners, I would go to you, Audrey, and then we can address this issue about the impediments that sometimes people say deliberately put in the way of some of these businesses to make it impossible to access some of these funds. So what do you think that these financial setup can do or need to change to allow better access when it comes, for you to better assist our businesses?
Okay, so when it comes to impediment, and for people to think that these are deliberate, I don't think that banks deliberately put impediments, to prevent businesses from accessing funds, because our core business is to buy and sell money. So under normal circumstance, every financial institution, especially the commercial banks, would want an avenue where we can, sell the money to individuals and then businesses in the economy. But like I said, the money that we possess, we are custodian of people's money, and therefore there's the need to put the right framework and requirements in place, processes and practices in place to ensure that when the monies leave us, they come back. That is why you would have a bank, asking for a collateral as a fallback. And, let me say this to all on the call, that when you are coming for a loan, collateral is not the first important thing that we look out for. And I'm sure it will surprise a lot of people. The first thing we look out for is the capacity or the ability of the business or the individual to pay back the money that you are coming to borrow from us. And if you are a business, it's about your cash flow. How much cash do you have available at the end of every month, or the period that you have said you would pay the money to meet your financial obligation? That is the first thing we look out for. Now, we bring in the collateral as a fallback, that in the event where you fail to pay, or meet your repayment obligation, we can then fall back on that collateral to offset the remaining amount that you have not been able to pay. Now, in terms of what banks can do to be able to, better assist the businesses, in my view, Emifa, I think that the banks must embrace some level of risk. Every business is risky, though in our setting, the risk seems to be very high. However, if we decide that we are going to be very risk averse and then invest in the large corporates, the multinationals, because they are more structured and formal and they have the systems in place to support borrowing, then we will not be able to help these SMEs to grow. So I think that banks must embrace that some level of risk and lend to SMEs without collateral up to a limit that is acceptable to the bank. So for example, in my bank, I will use my bank as an example. We are able to support SMEs with a loan up to 500,000 without collateral. And for women, especially women, we are able to support them with up to 1 million without collateral. So far, no bank is able to extend up to 1 million to entrepreneurs or SMEs without collateral. But we decided to embrace that level of risk, and we started doing this 5 years back. So we have extensively supported, because some of these SMEs, they don't need much. All they need 50,000, 100,000, 400,000, 500,000. And majority of them cannot give you the collateral you require or the 3 years audited account for you to do a historical analysis before you say that you qualify for a loan. So we need to embrace that level of risk. And then I also think that banks must enter into a risk-sharing agreement with development partners, with governments, with development banks, like in Ghana, what we are seeing with GESAL. GESAL is able to, de-risk lending to the agri sector up to about 70%. And then we also have the development bank. They are working with commercial banks, and they are de-risking the lending to certain sectors, key sectors of interest to them. We also have the African Guarantee Fund that is also available. So all of these institutions are available, and they offer de-risking lending tools to support commercial banks to be able to support SMEs. Now, in terms of what has to change, in my view, I think that we need to transform our credit operations. Most of the banks, including my bank, we are not flexible. Sometimes we assess an SME loan as we will assess a corporate or a multinational loan. And it doesn't work effectively that way. So I think that if we're able to embrace some level of risk where we can lend non-collateralized loans, we should be able to automate the process that allows you to lend without collateral to the SMEs within a very short period of time. Gideon was saying that it took him 6 months, though it will not take 6 months in my bank to give you money, though. But you see, it was so, it's unbelievable. But the good news is that Absa has been able to automate our unsecured loan up to 500,000. And today, as I speak, we are able to release funds to an SME within 48 hours, up to 500,000. We have been able to do that. So I think that other banks can also learn from us. And then also, a large number of SMEs, they don't understand the banking system and how to even position themselves to attract debt funding. I think that banks can structure their business model to inculcate capacity building for SMEs and provide some level of financial literacy training, like we are hearing from other speakers, to their business clients. And we do that at Absa. Our partnership with MasterCard Foundation, for example, enables us to offer very good business trainings for our clients that we support. And that is working for us. And finally, let me say that most banks don't have the framework to support micro businesses. One of the speakers mentioned that every year, the number of businesses that are opened, about 60% plus are micro businesses. But most of the commercial banks, we don't have the framework to support them. but they also need support. And invariably, what happens is that they go to the MFIs, the non-bank financial institutions, for loans at a very exorbitant rate, sometimes 5% a month, 10% a month. If you accumulate it for the year, over 100%, interest rates, which is serious. So I think that banks can partner with these microfinance institutions and then release funding to them at a considerably lower rate and influence the rates that they lend to their micro clients. And ABSA is doing that under our partnership with MasterCard Foundation. Going forward from next week, we'll be able to support microfinancial institutions up to $1 million at a very considerable rate, and we would influence the rate at which they should lend to their clients. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure most of the businesses or the entrepreneurs on here would be nodding all the way through. And if they had a chance of voting for you, I'm sure they would vote for you, Audrey, to make things happen for them. Philomena, please, you would have to mute your microphone. I'm getting some feedback from you whilst others are speaking. Thank you so much. I see that Anthony is back. We lost you earlier. And Samuel Gariba, I'm sure you want to make an input briefly, but let me bring Anthony on because we lost him earlier. He hasn't been able to make any submission at all since we started. So Anthony, before we lost you, I was asking about your dream that you told us about earlier. You were hoping to you were dreaming about a Ghana where in a business sector, we're going to import all the skills and the product that we are importing, and we'll be able to do everything here. But the concern or the question really for me is, do we have these new technologies and innovations that we should be investing in to produce that thriving agribusiness industry? Or should I add the policy interventions and the incentives needed? Do we have it as a country to be able to realize that dream of yours?
Right. Thank you very much, and a very good evening to all participants and my colleague speakers. No, currently as a country, I think that we are yet to realize the importance and the need to invest into research and innovation. Unlike other European countries that are investing about 40% of their GDP in research and innovation, and the reason why the reason why they are where they are today is because they see the need for continuity, the need for innovation, the need to play the leaderboard in global skills and innovation and technology. Most importantly, it's sad to understand that when it even comes to medicine, most of the medicines that or the raw materials that are used as the base for most medicines are found in Africa. Research funds comes from developing organizations, other developed countries into Ghana to research into some of these plant medicines. For instance, the plant that is used for doing Artemisia, all the malaria medicine is the Artemisia plant, okay? And we have it in abundance here in Ghana. It has well over 156 components, out of which only about 27% is used globally. And it has the propensity to solve several problems. But here in Ghana, until the COVID came, this plant was not widely known. Okay. What we need to start doing now as a country is to look at what other developed countries like Japan have done. After the Second World War, Japan did what? They shelved into what has been the global trend before the World War and where they want to be in 40 years. So they were able to mark up other developed countries. So for over 20, 30 years, Japan was the leaderboard when it comes to engineering. Japan was the leaderboard when it comes to technology in medicine, health, and globally, they were leaderboard. telecommunication, what have you. In agriculture sector, I think that as a country, we should be in a position to dictate global phenomena. But I've listened to my other speakers, especially from APSA, the last speaker, and she made mention of some very nice, beautiful figures. For us in the agribusiness and agriculture sector, it's good to trumpet some of these things, but the sector itself requires a number of serious interventions. For instance, how many of Ghana's SMEs have credit-worthy systems? And these are some of the things that the chamber has all along been trumpeting. Okay, how do we make sure that agribusiness, the startups, the innovative ideas and all that have well been integrated into a more rigorous system that requires them to fulfill some fundamentals, unlike other developed countries where they go through some credit rating system, some robust structural governance system and all that. I'll give you one example. We paid a visit to Brazil, where we had a number of engagements. In Brazil, the commercial or the financial institutions do not push finance on the throat of the farmers, do not put finance on the throat of other agribusiness value chain players. We have what we call the agriculture management service providers, who actually have the capacity, who actually have the guarantee system, who actually have what it takes to secure this some of these youth funding, and people are able to turn around the funding and pay the financial institutions. But in Ghana, we are being told that the farmers should go to the financial institution and take this financial credit. You and I know that if you look at the rigorous metrics that the financial institution put in place, they need governance structure, they need quarterly, monthly, weekly financials, and all these things. How many of these agribusinesses have it? So we continue to do this at the expense of making sure that we need to create jobs, we need to increase skills penetration, and of course, we need to fulfill the tenet of what? Food security and nutrition. And we can't continue to go this way when public and private investment into the agriculture sector has been very low for the past 20 years. Meanwhile, population growth has moved from 15 million to 36 million as we speak.
Well, Anthony, I'll come back. I'm giving you 5 minutes because we lost you earlier. But Samuel, I promised you I would allow you to make an input briefly. But let me welcome Mr. Seth Twuma-Kwabwa, who's the CEO of the Association of Ghana Industries, joining us now, thankfully. Mr. Twuma-Kwabwa, if you can hear me briefly, I'm sure that you would want to make a brief comment on the taxes that we are starting implementation today. We've been hearing from GUTA that they're going to pass on, the costs of these or the impact of this onto the consumer. Is the AGI with the GUTA on this? Maybe briefly on that, we want to know as consumers.
Well, thank you, MFA. I hope you can hear me clearly now.
Loud and clear.
Very good. Yes. Yes. So the tax system, I think the AGI position hasn't changed. We've had challenges with this particular tax system that have been introduced because we think it's not very supportive to industrial development and business in general. So our position has been that there's the need for a review. We would have wished that they had not come into being, and we've made a point that it was not extensively discussed with us. So our inputs were not taken on board. Otherwise, perhaps there would have been some tweaking here and there to make it more conducive to the business environment, especially to industry. The challenge we have is that when you have a tax system that is so general and it affects everybody, clearly it defeats government's own objective of promoting industrialization in the country. And we think that these are the areas we need to look at. Right now, we've gone through the entire process. It's been passed by Parliament, it's been assented, implementation is starting. So it doesn't look like there's anything that anybody can do. We just need to monitor and see and assess the impact, and then make further submissions. As we all analyze the impact, we probably will make a better submission to government for a possible review in the course of the period. Now, the question of whether you pass on the cost to consumers, GUTA can say so, but for industry, it's not that simple, because we live in a very competitive environment. The competition is not just domestic, it's also international. You have a lot of foreign products coming into our market. They probably have different tax regime. Even if some of the taxes are also going to be paid by the importers, their local business environment is different from ours. And therefore, for the typical industrial operator who is going through various challenges, borrowing money at over 30%, paying electricity bills at high cost, and Ghana's cost of energy is one of the highest around. And now water is also becoming a big challenge, especially for the beverage companies. So if you put all this together, and then there is tax, adding it to your cost and passing it on in the form of higher prices is not that simple. Because when you increase your prices, the question is whether your consumers can absorb it. And if you don't have consumers who are prepared to buy at that higher price, it means you don't have business. And if you don't have business, then you are not actually going to operate. So it's not that simple. For companies that have a bit of reasonable margin, they could say, let me absorb part of it and pass on the rest to the consumers. So they will do so. It will mean that their profit will dwindle. For those that have very little margin, by the time they absorb it, they are already run at a loss. Bear in mind that some of the companies are already operating at a loss. So that's where the challenge is. If you're already operating at a loss, and then you cannot absorb this cost, your consumers cannot buy, what will happen? You are going to lose significant market share, and then it becomes a challenge. So every company and how you approach this, it will not be as simple as just passing it on the consumer, and then the consumer takes it, and then you make your margins or cover your costs, and they're okay. So that is where the challenge is. It will very depend on the individual businesses and the industries on how to manage this. But generally speaking, AGI, if you ask my general opinion, it's going to talk to the industries, and it's not surprising at all that if you look at the companies, even the manufacturing firms on the Ghana Stock Exchange, you can look at their numbers. These are companies that are publishing their accounts by law, and therefore you can look at their numbers, and they are all making losses. So it's a big challenge for most industries.
Well, I was going to ask how businesses really, your members, how are they doing considering the times that we're in? But I'll come back to you on that. Maybe you can ponder on that, and also what policies and structures and regulations need to change to help businesses in this country. But let me bring in Samuel, because I've promised him for some time now. Samuel Garba, you have a minute. I see that you want to make an input, or is there a question? Please put it across. Samuel, are you there? Okay, I would pass on that. It doesn't look like Samuel is ready, unfortunately. If you want to make an input.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, Samuel, briefly.
Okay. Can you repeat the question?
So I thought that you had an input. You wanted to ask a question, or you wanted to make an input, or I was wrong?
No.
Okay, all right then. That's fine. I'll pass on at this point. Maybe Charles, let me bring you in, because you are into this. You've been looking at the business environment, at least. You've done research and consultations on this. But what would you say are some of the best practices that we can adopt in order to enhance our private sector? We're going into forward-looking and solutions at this point. So what for you, maybe you start it off for us, are the best practices that we can adopt to enhance our private sector, Charles?
Okay, thank you, MFA. So I'm going to take it this way. First of all, I'm just going to give you one practice, looking at the practical work that we do with the SME. And then I'll take the opportunity to also share with you. There's some noise coming from someone, so if that can help. And then, because we've been working in terms of the research and putting together the compact people in private sector, I'll share with you some of the proposed solutions so that our audience will also get to know what the compact is seeking to do. So generally, the experience is that we, working with these SMEs, typical Ghanaian SMEs, even when they grow to become what was the medium, you realize that data integrity is a major problem. People, even if where they have systems in place, you see that personal expenses are the expenses of the company. But when it comes to revenue, the revenues of the company becomes personal finances for these people. And because of that, they always try to find ways and means to, write the books in a way that obviously the moment you start looking at it, you don't have that integrity. So one of the best practice based on some of the real experiences we're having with SMEs is that they need to truly be credible in the way they work out their books. And some of them genuinely are not keeping good books, not because they don't want to, but because they really don't have the resources. These days, there are digital softwares and very simple ones that you don't need to pay so much for it that can actually help you to do manage your business processes, and that will lead to very good reports in terms of credible reports that have the integrity to be able to deal with partners, and especially if you're going to go for finance, because we have talked about all these risky nature of SMEs. So these are some of the practical ways you see SMEs in Ghana behaving in a way that really do not make them good candidates for financing partnerships with foreigners that probably could help them, scale to the next level. But having said that, let me go into, based on the work we did, and then also the consultations that we've had with the broader private sector community. And there are 5 key areas that the compact is seeking to do. And one of them, which we've touched on, the de-risking, and I think the financiers and the other even private sector people have talked about, we need to find a way to de-risk the private sector. So not only at the firm level, but also more at the macro level, where where we need to put in, examples like GESAL and other insurances or guarantees that will help, to drive cost of financing to the SMEs. This is one area that we're looking at in terms of the future of private sector, having a financial environment or a business environment that is de-risked to the extent that it makes it very comfortable or convenient for both business partners and financiers to participate. The other bit, we're looking more on the policy side. So we really need to improve coordination and also policy continuity and revamp commitment to private sector development. I mean, we've seen that in the past years through successive government. Very laudable, project policies have come, but they are always discontinued by successive government. This is something that we need to try and move away from, improve the coordination even between the various institutions that are looking at private sector development in the country. We also believe that through the consultation, that's for Ghana, it's a naturally needed long-term plan to ensure consistent and some strategic investment in major infrastructure that will facilitate the ease of doing business. We've in the past seen, for example, the Ghana Free Zones. This was an attempt where we're trying to grow industries and improve Ghana's exports potential. But it still remains that infrastructure is a major challenge. And this is something that once we are able to cater for, the private sector could benefit, tremendously to drive growth. We also was asking that, we need to, as a country, be very deliberate about nurturing and growing winners, because small businesses do not themselves really grow or transform economies. I mean, they are part of the place, but you need to have big winners who would drive growth in value chains. And through this growth, small businesses can take advantage of the opportunities and also grow. So we need to be very deliberate as a country going forward. If we're looking at the future that we want for our private sector, to be very deliberate with really nurturing and growing businesses or winners in our economies that can actually also go beyond to the regional level and the continental level. Maybe lastly, what I want to add is that as a country, we need to encourage and promote young entrepreneurs by, providing unbridled access to business development services. And I know that GEA and other, even the banks and all those are supporting capacity building. But we really need to do that because with young entrepreneurs, they're actually the catalyst for modernization and healthy competition, because they are more versatile at navigating the dynamic demands of the business environment, and they really take competition to the next level by introducing viable business models, driven by technology. And it is something that we need to pay attention. I know that there are quite a number of hubs and incubators and accelerators that are trying to incubate and support young businesses. But at a national level, we also need to be very deliberate about these attempts and have strategies and drive the needed financing to make this happen. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. Thank you.
Well, pretty much you've also, at least to a large extent, included the role of civil society in promoting a more inclusive and sustainable business environment in Ghana. I was hoping to come to you on that, but maybe subsequently you'd have more to touch on that. I will come to you on it. But Kim, let me bring you in at this point. I would want to hear, really, from your perspective, what would you say needs to be done first to enhance the industry that you're in, which is the agribusiness industry, and then secondly also to attract young people and women into that space?
Okay, so I'll start it from the second half of the question. In order to attract young people and women into the agribusiness sector, education needs to happen, and it's not like the learning by rote to education, but it's practical education where people can actually get to practically experience the benefits of agribusiness in terms of from the farm to the manufacturing. So for example, I was part of a program for young children where they were exploring different resources, and one of them was cocoa. And so I came to them and I made on a small scale. I taught them how to make chocolate from bean to bar. And these were kids between the ages of, let's say, 4 and 10. And to see them interested in, okay, how is cocoa grown? And what can be made with cocoa? And actually practically making, the end product, which is chocolate with cocoa, you could see that they began to have an interest in both the farming and in the manufacturing side. So that helps develop the interest in agribusiness. So it's important to get people at a young age and give them the practical experience. So farming hasn't been attractive to people because they see it as, an impoverished, business where you're not going to earn a lot of money. But if you teach people how to grow and then you don't stop at that, but then teach people how to add value to what they grow, then there's more interest in that. So it's very important to educate people and give them practical experiences in the agribusiness sector. And then the first part of the question, can you repeat that, please?
I was asking, in your experience, really, I was hoping to find out how we can do things differently to be able to grow the sector that you are in, which is the agribusiness sector.
Yeah, so how we can help grow the agribusiness sector is,
and then what needs to be done, for instance, to enhance it as well.
Okay, so how you can help grow the agribusiness sector is to, first of all, there needs to be more access to capital. I would say that's one of the biggest challenges because you need machinery. So take for example me, who I'm in the chocolate making sector. Chocolate making is extremely complicated in terms of the machinery, and a lot of the machinery you can't necessarily find locally, and you have to import it. And when you import, then you're paying high importation fees. So that's another challenge where you don't have the proper machinery to be able to produce your final product. So people need access to the capital to be able to bring in those machineries. And then also there needs to be something done in terms of the high importation fees, because you can bring in a machine. For example, I brought in a machine, and the import fees I ended up paying, I might as well have bought 2 machines. So that's another key area in helping to see the sector grow as well, just to keep my answer short.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Kimberly. But Philomena, let me come to you on this, because I've heard what Audrey told us. At least there's some inclusion when it comes to women as well, access to funding for a lot of women in SMEs. But as Director of Policy Planning, Research and Evaluation, in your experiences, is there a difference in the support that female entrepreneurs require compared to men? And what would you say needs to be in place to better support women in businesses?
Yeah, thank you, Emifa. I believe that, yes, there is a difference in the support that female entrepreneurs require compared to men. Because as we all know, women play domestic roles, and so they don't have a lot of time when it comes to growing their businesses. So you agree with me that, yes, in Ghana, we have more females than males, according to the GSS population data. The population of women stands at about 51%, whilst we have 49% for males. But unfortunately, the reverse is the case when it comes to ownership of businesses. The good news is that Ghanaian women are hardworking, and government support to these women has helped in part to improve conditions of women in Ghana. Ghana ranks a third in Africa as a country with more female entrepreneurs, but a lot needs to be done, as there exists a huge gap. You know that women have problems when it comes to access to finance. This is because if you pick the informal sector, women are in the majority because they operate at the micro level. When it comes to movement to the small and medium level, you see the men progressing, whilst the businesses of these women are stagnant, because they operate these businesses as a way to survive. Women also have problems when they have to provide collateral to access credit, and sometimes they don't have the time to network with other female entrepreneurs that are doing very, very well. And where we conducted a baseline survey last year, where we were able to survey more than 80,000 micro, small, and medium enterprises across the country. We realized that when it comes to technology, innovation, and other digital services, women's participation or usage of these services is low. So I believe that we have to deliberately put in place measures, programs to support women to grow from one level to the other. Because
do we know exactly why it is low, Philo? Do we know exactly why it is low?
It is low because they are in the informal sector. Most of these businesses are in the informal sector. So although there is availability of technology and all that, they don't really use them. So now we need to ensure that we build their capacity. So Ghana Enterprises Agency has developed a program with GIZ to provide innovation and digital solutions to women. It's called the D4J, Digitalize to Create Jobs program for women entrepreneurs. We also have a directorate responsible for developing of programs for women, because they have peculiar needs, and we need to ensure that we would always find out what the issues are and develop programs to help them accelerate their businesses.
Okay. Well,
in the next few weeks or days, we are going to roll out a program, a financing program for women, the youth, and the disabled, because they form the marginalized group in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to that. I was hoping you give us timelines for that, and then we can be the first to assess it once it comes. What are the timelines? Should we know?
And to be within this week, within this month. Let's look at the middle of May. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first, and once it comes, we'll let you know. But Gideon, at least there are a lot for women in businesses. But let me find out, forward-looking, what would you say? You've been in leather production for leather products production, I should say, for the past 10 years. What role do you think innovation and technology can play, because the world is moving so fast, in transforming Ghana's business ecosystem from where you stand?
Thank you. I think because we operate in a more TVET sector, that's a technical vocational education sector, and we all know how our TVET sector here is in Ghana. And so it's even very difficult to even get the right skill or labor to be able to recruit. So that is one. But I was part of a stakeholder discussion, I think 2 days ago, on how best we could employ TVET in transforming our sector. But again, we are very much aware that technology will really play a very important role in making sure that we are ahead of the curve, in our sector. It's not been easy in the leather value chain, but I also feel that with the right education, like the coffee lady said, we will be able to outbeat competition, especially within the African region.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gideon, for keeping it very short for me. Ms. Oxtuna-Kwabwa, I'll come to you because I asked a substantive question of, if you were to test the pulse of businesses in Ghana as we speak, how really are our businesses doing, considering the times that we're in? And I would want you to add how government and private sector can work together for us to create a more supportive business environment in Ghana from where you stand.
Well, okay, thank you. So the question of how businesses are doing, surely, as we all know, that they're in challenging times, and these are difficult, really difficult times. So most businesses are struggling, and you can judge this from so many factors. The fact that generally demand has fallen. I've been doing visits to some of our companies, and indeed, most of the companies we visit, they will tell you their market has gone down, their revenue target has not been met. In fact, we did a small survey a few weeks ago, and over 70% of the businesses we spoke to said they had not achieved their revenue targets. So clearly, they are struggling. And we can also tell from the ports, the imports of goods into the country consist of both finished and then the raw materials. So if the port is dry, it means that both the finished products coming in is having a challenge, and then the raw materials for further production is also having a challenge. So generally speaking, there have been challenges in the economic environment, and therefore it's affecting businesses. On how we can work together, I've listened to other speakers, and I think there are so many ways that we can implement different policies and structural changes to improve the business environment. The first thing that we always need to take note of for businesses is the macroeconomic stability. If you don't have stable macroeconomic environment, no matter how hard you work as a business person, using all your resources, your business acumen, your skills, your network, there are factors that you don't have control over, and those are the macroeconomic issues. Like what is happening now, if the inflation is going up, as an individual business, you don't have control over it. If policy rate is going up, you can't have control over it. interest rate is so up there, there's nothing you can do. So the macroeconomic environment is critical for businesses to plan and predict, and on the basis of that, attract the kind of investment, whether local or foreign, to be able to do the big ticket business. So if you really want to support businesses, the first thing you need to do is to have a stable macroeconomic environment that you can predict all the key indicators. It's a prerequisite for business development and it's key to everything we are doing. That is one. When you move from there, then you can also talk about the fact that I speak more for industry. The industry is key because we need to create jobs for the teeming youth that are coming out of our universities. We estimate that over 200,000 to 300,000 people are coming out of our tertiary institutions every year, or at least are entering the working class every year. Where are the jobs to absorb all these? I can say that most businesses, most industries are not expanding. Even if they are not downsizing, they are really not expanding to absorb more people. So job creation is key. Now, if you really want to support industrial growth beyond the macroeconomic environment, we must also look at the linkage between agric and industry. Every country specializes or emphasizes in areas that they have competitive and comparative advantage. We see ourselves as an agrarian economy, and therefore agriculture is key. And therefore, if you really want to support industry to grow, then the linkage between agriculture and industry is very important. I know the effort that is being made by the Ministry of Agric, but they see food security as their core objective. I think that we've achieved significant part of it. We should go beyond that to actually produce to feed industry. Unless we have consistent, reliable, and regular supply of raw material to feed industry, our agro-processing part of our industry will not work. And that is where we have a challenge. So the linkage between agric and industry is key. It also means that the value chains must work. If the farmer produces, he must have an off-taker. And he gets an off-taker, there must be the transportation and logistic arrangement to transport it at the cheapest possible cost to the industry, so that when the industry processes, their cost of production will be low. And if it's low, then they become competitive. And that's where they can then flood the market with their goods. Today, if you go to the market, a lot of the products we are consuming is being imported because we are not very competitive. In addition to the value chain is not working, the cost of doing business in Ghana is high. And therefore, if you really want to support industry, what do we do to reduce the cost of energy, for example, cost of capital? That relates to the macroeconomic environment as well, and all these other factors that contribute to the high cost of doing business. It is very important. We talked a lot about the SMEs. The SMEs are key, and we talked about the youth in business, or how to encourage the women and the youth. Again, one of the speakers mentioned that we need to pick winners, and I understand that principle. In doing so, we must have, for me, what we should emphasize on is off-takers, so that you could have big companies operating very well, taking advantage of the markets and other conditions, and then encouraging the SMEs to be linked to those companies and producing and becoming suppliers. When you have those value chains working, when you ask the youth to go into business and they have to come and struggle through the market, even the big companies with all the resources at their disposal, they are struggling. So for a youth or a small business to start small and continue to grow and become big is very tough. So if you really want to support, then the linkages between the SMEs and the big companies as off-takers becomes key. This cannot be left to chance. It must be structured arrangement. So if you are talking of a policy structure or arrangement between government and industry and other industrial and other players like agriculture producers, this is where it is important. I can tell you, we don't have big farm or commercial farming that are producing at competitive price to supply regularly to industries. So it's a problem. The small enterprises, they don't have clear off-takers. So that's also a problem. We need to fix that. When it comes to finance, for example, the current macroeconomic conditions make access to finance even more difficult. Audrey talked about the fact that they have finance schemes that is supporting enterprises and all that, which is very good. But to upscale, you need a certain kind of funding that is long-term in nature and that is also competitive in terms of pricing, so that you can borrow and do big ticket business. There are certain businesses, if you don't produce to a certain scale, you can't be viable in the system because competition is key. So you need to support with that kind of funding. Our current funding structure, where government itself competes with the private sector. Look at the recent situation where most of the banks, a lot of the banks, were buying government bonds, buying treasury bills. So virtually all the funds we had in the system were going to the government system. How much of it was left to the private sector at a competitive price to develop? So if you have government crowding out the access to private sector lending, then you have a challenge growing the private sector. So you need to have a finance scheme that works. Today we have the Development Bank. It is very young, still in embryonic state. I don't think the funds we put there is enough. It's just scanty funds. We need to grow it and then structure it in a way that gives the kind of funding we need. Today I heard
Okay.
the pension funds, for example. That is perhaps the only patient fund we have in the system. How can we structure such that instead of government, 80% of the whole pension fund going to government-related government test? How can we structure it such that a part of it could go to the private sector to support private
Okay.
sector borrowing on a long-term basis? So
Well,
these
we've
are
been
some of the
hearing from the
factors.
president today on the pension fund, exactly. And he says that the government will not do anything that will jeopardize that fund, at least at the May Day celebration. That was one of the direct response that he's been giving to Labour when it comes to the pension fund and the concerns that have been raised. But we'll see how it pans out subsequently. But I'm sure when you were speaking about the linking agrarian industry, amongst others, and the macro stability situation, which for you is key, I can't see Farmer Anthony, but I'm sure he's been nodding through it all because that's the sector that he will be happy that you're touching on. So I get to you, Anthony, on this. I'm sure you are happy to hear that, but I would want to find out if there are some regulatory frameworks, at least. We can't just be linking agri to industry in the way that it is as we speak. But what can we do as a country to strengthen these regulatory frameworks in place for us in order to create a more transparent and a predictable business environment of a sort when it comes to your sector?
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed listening to my good brother AGI said. I think that first of all, the banks ought to be innovative. In developed countries, banks are leading in financing research into finance, into industry, into the economy and various sectors of the economy. Banks are actually leading this. And in Ghana, none of the banks have been able to finance any innovative research that has influenced any kind of regulatory regime. So in our industry, regulations are out of the result of the fact that the industry that is so far ahead of the regulatory bodies or government have to play catch up. For instance, when we started talking about blockchain technologies, drones and sensors, we also started talking about Bitcoin and other several technologies. Industry was so far ahead of government. And for that matter, government have to resort to peanuts to be able to come out and do some kind of regulatory regime, which in most cases doesn't cater for most of the things that we do. So for us, it's been a major challenge. For instance, what has been Ghana's major export and import strategy? The strategy document has been developed over the past years, but the regulatory regime to make sure that it works is not there. We are not able to develop these regulatory regimes and put financing or resource these institutions to be able to roll out what the strategies and the policy says. For instance, we have had the Ghana.
Everything okay, Anthony?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We
Okay.
lost you briefly.
So yes. So are we able, for instance, to be able to put our foot forward, take up the political commitment to reduce the over 1.3 billion importation of rice, 1.3 billion importation of frozen chicken, $400 million worth of tomatoes importation, and also over $700 million worth of fruit juice into the country. These are political commitments, and we have regulatory regimes, regulatory instruments, and institutions that ought to make sure that the regulatory regimes and all these policies and strategies actually work for Ghana. But we don't see some of these things working, all because of the political commitment. Now, sometimes I ought to sometimes I want to put a lot of blame on the side of the financial institutions, in that when you look at the raw material sector and also the startups, what has been the financial institutions' commitment towards supporting the growth of these startups, the innovations, and all other SMEs and other businesses? They are only concerned about what they get. And for instance, how many of the financial institutions are able to do portfolio management? How many are able to say that we are taking on board 1,000 or 200 startups in the country, and we are going to make sure that by 5 years, they are able to develop themselves from startups to medium-scale enterprises, and their governance structure and all their financials and everything they need to do is in place? None. All they care about is, oh yes, we are throwing money there, and this is what is happening. We have heard of monies from coming from MasterCard Foundation that has been given to this so and so financial institutions. At the end of the day, when you go back 5 years time, 10 years time, how many of these startups that over $100 and something million has been spent on are still in existence? You can't count more than 5. You see, we ought now as a country to be more strategic and impactful. We talk about agro-processing, we talk about agriculture industry. When you continue to give financial or credit to an industry and you do not take consideration as to the production cycle, you don't take credit of $100 million and you start paying in 30 days time or 3 months time. For agriculture to work, you need a patient capital. It is for that reason we need regulatory regimes that are able to take care of that. We have been advocating for the fact that there is a need for us to have the National Agricultural Regulatory Body. But nobody seems to be listening, and it seems as though people are so focused and greedy and selfish on creating regulatory body for their sectorial activities. It doesn't work like that. If you take the United States Department for Agriculture, that is the United States regulatory body, and they only seeks regulatory support from Congress, and that is it, not from any other political regime. That is where they derive. And this is where we need to start driving, because most of 75 to 80% of our MPs in Parliament are all from the rural areas. Only 20 to 25 are from regional capitals and the national and other capitals. So we have to retwin our regulatory bodies for agriculture. I can hear a lot of feedback. So I don't.
Anthony, you should be wrapping up for me. For you, it appears that the 5 minutes just runs so quickly.
I don't know
you've
why.
Done more than 5 minutes on this. Yes. Exactly. You've done more than
but,
5
but,
minutes.
But,
maybe
but
because
to
you're
run
a celebrity farmer.
To run up, I think that we have to be strategic in our support system for agriculture, support system for deliberate support system from gender, and that after 5 years, when we go back, whatever support system that has been given to gender, it has to be very impactful. We have to see them like the Eden Tree and all these people who had support over the past years, and they are still standing. You understand? So
Okay,
this is what
we appreciate it.
so
I'll give you a final word also when we come round again, and then we can wrap up on that. Thank you so much, Anthony, on this. Kimberly, I'll come to you briefly because you've been talking to your other banks on embracing risk and giving to these SMEs, especially women, without the collateral system. But I would want you to also speak to these SMEs or businesses that come to these banks for some of these funding. You talked about the availability of these funds. It's just that these businesses are unstructured. It's their nature that is making it difficult for them to have access to these funds. But I saw Kwame earlier, Kwame Stalwart, I saw your 100% take earlier on the submissions on linking agric and industry. I don't know if you want to make any input at this point. For those of us listening, if you have any questions or you would want to make any input at this point, please feel free to prompt us, because I'm sure that because of the way the conversation is going, so interesting, you are writing down notes, so nobody wants to make inputs at this point. But please just do feel free to make any inputs. If you want to, just cut me along the line and draw my attention, and you can ask any questions at all. But Kimberly, let me Audrey instead. Audrey, let me come to you on this. I was asking you earlier about speaking to your other banks on embracing risk, but what should businesses really be doing? What are the tips that you would want to give them? Because for them to have access to these funds, which we now know are very much available, it's just that we don't have access to it.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I've been listening, especially to the last speaker. It would have been good if financial institutions had framework to support startups, for example. But because that terrain is very risky, most banks, like he said, do not have the framework to do that. If a bank is able to do that, then that bank should be able to access funding that does not belong to the depositor, like a grant fund, and give it to these startups and then nurture them to grow. But most banks, are not in that space. Few banks are working with development partners to, release some sort of grant. For example, ABSA, we have been able to support 10 agri fintech companies, very young entrepreneurs with grant fund. And that grant fund was made possible through MasterCard Foundation. So when we're able to access some of these funding, it's much easier. But to use depositors' funding for that, it's very risky. And BOG audits us, so we have to make sure that we protect these funds. Now, coming to what businesses can do to position themselves to be able to access funding from banks, I will give a couple of thoughts. Okay, number one is for the business institution to have a relationship with a financial institution. You cannot go to any bank and ask for money if you don't have a relationship with them. So that is the first, important consideration. You have to open an account with the bank that you believe can partner your business, the bank that is well capitalized and liquid and is in the position to support your businesses, making lending, requirements seamless to you. So relationship with bank is very important. And usually, if you are a new business to the bank would require that you manage your account for a minimum of 6 months. For women in ABSA, we give them up to 3 months. And within, after 3 months, we are able to support them. And then businesses need to, keep proper accounts managed. I'm not talking about bookkeeping. Our system is such that it's able to record basic, in and out, your inflows and your outflows. Businesses, when they open accounts with banks, I heard one of the speakers, I think the gentleman in leather business, indicating that when he wanted a loan, he was asked to, ensure that his flows were coming into the bank, because that is what gives the bank the comfort that you will be able to pay the facility that is, extended to you. So there should be proper account management. If you come to us, we'll be able to educate you on how to manage your account inflows and outflows and bring and then put it in a shape that will be able to support you. And then also, we look out for businesses that have existed for at least a minimum of 3 years. Okay, meaning that a lot of startups may not qualify for these loans unless you are 3 years. And I think I have spoken extensively on why that does not happen because of the nature of risk. And in terms of those that want to access large ticket size, Mr. Koba talked about the fact that at the point, the 500,000, the 1 million uncollateralized loans that we give you may not be able to help you to scale. It will help you to survive and thrive. But if you get to the point of scaling, that is where structuring your business becomes so important. That is where keeping a proper financial record becomes important. That is where having a good management team in place to manage the business becomes important. So any business that requires to lend, at a higher scale or a larger scale, it is important that you go through the pain to structure your business and put the right systems in place so that you can be attracted to a banking institution. And then we are looking at your management expertise and then character. MFA, character is important. The character of the individual. There are some businesses, it is so difficult to deal with them. When they come to borrow from you and something happens, the way they talk to you, the way they manage the relationship, you wouldn't want to, lend support to them anymore. So character, integrity, credibility, loyalty is so important for a bank to support you. And finally, when you are coming to borrow, you must be very clear about what you want to use the money for. You can't get up and say, I want money. Definitely, you must have a need. If you don't have a need for money, don't come to the bank to borrow because you would have to pay. And we have seen instances where people have come to borrow and they have channeled it into ventures that was not originally the purpose for the funds, and they have defaulted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for that. I'm sure, Mr. Kobo, your concerns you raised earlier about these banks, would you say it's been addressed, the concerns? Some of these business come without structure amongst others. I don't know if anybody else want to make an input on this particular issue on these funding and these companies going there without proper structures in place. Giddens, I don't know if you would want to briefly make an input on this. Does that satisfy you? Has the concerns that you have as businesses, has it been addressed? How about you, Kimberly? Briefly, then we can have our closing thoughts from all of us on this. And if there are any questions also, please feel free and let me know, and then we can bring you in for your brief comments as well. Gideon.
Sorry, I don't think what's your question.
Okay, so I was asking about the concerns that have been raised by Audrey when it comes to some of these businesses coming and not having the proper structures in place. He's talked about character, integrity, amongst others, when they want these funds. So the funds are available. It's just that businesses are not getting their act right, for which reason they are not getting access to these funds. Is there any input you want to make on that?
Okay, I think I could sense the... if I should say the frustration on the bankers, voice, how some businesses react and all that. I think she's not far from right. I've been part of some accelerations and all that, and these are some of the comments some of the bankers who are trying to train us to be investor ready also share. And so it is very true what she's saying, but I also want to say that character is very important. And I remember I had to switch from one bank to the other. And what they required of me was just to get, let's say, a 6-month statement from the other bank. And they were able to easily give me the money, even though I didn't have a relationship with them for like more than a year. So I think it was the consistency with which I had made my cash flow, was consistent. So it was very easy for me to get the loan from the other bank. So that was very right from her. But again, I'll be very glad if, I don't want to mention any bank's name, but from what they are doing with MasterCard, they will be able to do more with other development partners so that for young businesses like ours and those who are coming up, we will get some form of term loans with soft loans and all that, so that we don't really go through that, if I should say, the harsh interest rate of 30% and all that, because then I feel that it makes, it doesn't make business or even setting up businesses very like an incentive for young entrepreneurs. I've been part of programs where, I told you I transitioned from friends and family to grants.
Exactly.
Instead of just going to the commercial loans, I went for a program that had a combination of grant and soft loan. So then I used the grant part to do piloting and research and development. Because I can't go for a commercial loan to go and do research and development or to pilot something, a new innovation. If I fail, it means I'm going to pay at the cost of 33% interest rate. So then I had to go for a program that had a hybrid of loans and grants. And the loan was at 5%. This was because they partnered with the development agency. So I wish most banks would be able to do that, so that they could transition the smaller businesses from that combination of grant soft loan before they can now go to commercial loans, because then it's a learning curve for all of us, right? It will be very difficult to go into to start off a business and go for a loan at 33%. I think it will kill your business, right?
MFI, if I may come in just a few minutes just to give a very important information, so talking about giving loans at a very lower rate, I'm happy to say that from next week, we'll be coming to market to lend to agribusinesses, women-led businesses, youth-led businesses, and fintech at 10%. And they can access up to 500,000 without collateral. That is the men. And then the women can access up to 1 million Ghana cedis without collateral. For up to 500,000 within 48 hours, you should have your money. But your business must have operated from up to 3 years, from 3 years upward. Anything below 3 years, we would want to, observe you until you are 3 years old and more.
I love such announcements. And quickly, I've seen that Mr. Chimakoba has unmuted. I'm sure that Anthony will also unmute shortly. Seth, you want to quickly make that input? Please be making a lot of these announcements here for us. Seth, you want to make an input briefly? You're going to applaud Audrey for this?
Just a quick brief on the submissions by Audrey and some of our other colleagues concerning the fact that SMEs, if you want to have access to bank loans and facilities that are available, you need to keep your books. Your governance system must be good and strong and all that. And it's all very true. I always saying that even if monies are being available and it's being dashed, there are still people who will not get it, because they have not prepared themselves for anything, even if it's being dashed away. So let alone being a loan that you have to pay back, and the banker has to assess and be sure that you have the capacity to generate the resources and pay back. So I can understand that. But we must also be mindful of the fact that some businesses have grown beyond that point. It's not every business. I can understand Audrey because she is speaking more in respect of SMEs, and she's on the SME desk at the bank. But there are businesses that have grown beyond SME, and they are relatively bigger. Their governance systems is up to date. When you start business, you are the accountant, you are the production manager, you are the marketing person. Everything is on you. But as you grow, you then bring in professionals to manage various aspects, and then get to a point where you have full-time professionals working with you. So businesses go through transitions, and we must be mindful of this. Now, the point is that it's not every business that have all these governance systems in place, which are good, which proper record keeping and all that still get access to the kind of funding we need. And we must be mindful of that. So it means that there's something more we need to do. At the SME levels, we can preach this. It's very important. But beyond that, we must also appreciate that some businesses have all these governance systems, but they still don't have the kind of funding we need, because the policies in place does not support that. Again, we got to be very strategic as a country if you want to drive certain activities. For example, in the agricultural value chain, when people were planting maize and other things for the agri value chain, sometimes you may have even done agro schemes. Suddenly, demand goes up, prices go up, and even you, the one who have invested along the chain, cannot have access because the farmers would have sold to a higher price market. So there are factors. So in a situation like this, government policy can drive things, like we have in the cocoa sector. When it comes to cashew and some agricultural products, there must be a cap. There must be an arrangement where government says you can't even sell beyond this price. Of course, the price you give to the farmers should be competitive enough. But beyond that, nobody can come in. So policy and strategy can drive a lot of these things. Businesses can have all the governance system, but the external factors can still take them out of business. And we should bear that in mind. Sometimes you don't have control on the market, just that. And that alone, the bank will say you are not a good candidate because you are not being truthful. But there are so many factors that can hit you. And as a business person, you don't even know what to do. So I think it was important to keep in that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for chipping that in. I was hoping we could work within the 2 hours, but just a few more minutes, and then I can take final words from all of you. But Kim has to leave us. So Kim, maybe I'll bring you in briefly. There's been a good announcement from next week. Some announcement from ABSA, up to 500,000, amongst others, that will be made available within 48 hours for agribusinesses like yours. So briefly, I'll take your final words, and then I can let you off. I know you have to be somewhere else. So Kim, you can come in with your final thoughts on what you've heard so far and what your parting words will be for us in transforming Ghana's business ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. So it's very interesting to hear about the ABSA, and that's very interesting to me because as a business, we actually haven't really approached banks just because of the high interest rate, but seeing that, that's something we'll definitely be looking into. So thank you, Audrey, for sharing that. And my closing remarks, once again, is just based upon all that we've said, is that in order to have an enabling environment, it takes people across from all sectors, people in policy, people in the actual businesses, working together to implement policies and to create facilities so that young people can actually establish businesses, establish the necessary structures to enable to grow those businesses. And this cuts across all sectors, from government to business to the education sector to the agriculture sector. Yes, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining us. Kimberly Addison, co-founder 57 Chocolate, should have to leave us, but we're just wrapping up at this point. Just a few more minutes. I'll give each speaker 2 minutes so we can wrap up. I'll reserve the best for the last, probably for Charles. Charles, because I would want you to talk a bit more about the compact and all, so I'll make you the final speaker for this. So let's start with Philomena on this 2 minutes. I'm sure there still is no all doom and gloom at this point, but I'll take your final remarks for today in how we can transform Ghana's business ecosystem as a country, as entrepreneurs, and as business people. 2 minutes, please. Philomena, if you can hear me, I want to start with you. Philomena is not ready. Okay, Audrey, if you are there and you can hear me,
yes, I can.
Your final thoughts, exactly, your final thoughts in the next 2 minutes so we can wrap up.
Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
So finally, what I would say is that, there are very good actors within the SME ecosystem, and we are all seeking, the interests of the SME. We want to see the SME in Ghana grow. We want to see them thrive and even become generational businesses, within the country. What I would say is, let us work collaboratively. It is said that when you work, you walk alone. Okay, you can go that far. But when you work with people, the impact you make is great. So let us work together and then support these SMEs. I believe that there's a future for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for keeping it very short for me. I appreciate that's Audrey Abaka, Head of SME Agency Banking and Partnership at ABSA. Let me come to you, Anthony, in the next 2 minutes also, so we can have your final thoughts and what for you should be the way to going forward? You've said a lot, but how are we transforming Ghana's business ecosystem as a people and as a society? In 2 minutes, please.
Well, first of all, I think that as a country, we need to commit funds into agriculture. We need to take stock and invest heavily into data. I've listened to everyone speaking, but I'm yet to hear from any of them about investment into data and investment into skills. And aside skills, innovation and research are very critical. For instance, as a country, what is our data when we speak from AGI? What is our data when we speak from APSA? What is our data when we speak from GESL? What is our data when we speak from National Entrepreneurship Agency? And what is our data when we speak from the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana? We have to be informed by robust data that is timely, that informs decisions, that can influence why we lobby or advocate for certain critical support systems. And data must also inform the banks why they should change their style of banking. I heard them talking about we can't put depositors' money into startups, but they, at the end of the financial year, they announced 200 million profit. What happens to the 200 million profits? I know they have to pay shareholders, but at the end of the day, when you set aside some money, deliberate money, you have to be deliberate about supporting critical part of the industry. And for me, at the end of the day, governments have to take deliberate actions. We can't continue to import food to feed the people of Ghana. The only way we can do that is to put some serious kind of regulations on both the banking sector, financial institutions, and the private investment and government itself to continue to increase budgetary allocation annually for the agriculture sector, because the country's population keeps on growing. We were 60 million 10 or 15 years ago. Now we are 36 million. We have to increase our budgetary allocation from 1% to 20%. That is when we can begin to come to the point to say, look, we cannot be competitive or have comparative advantages around the sub-region and possibly continental to be able to leap our footsteps and be able to be competitive on the global market.
Okay, I began lobbying ASET to have us do this again, so that we can have a part 2 of this, so we can complete it once and for all. But Anthony Morrison, there is the CEO, Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. Thank you so much for your final thoughts. And let me bring in Gideon Denjo, and let's take your final thoughts on tonight's discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that I would just want to end by saying that I think we are all interested in trying to build a better Ghana, and also ensuring that we have a very an environment that businesses will thrive. I think it's our responsibility to make sure that is done. But I would like to plead with organizations like AGI, because I think they represent the majority of businesses, that as they've seen or the data tells them, and suggestions and whatever grievances we have as smaller businesses or even as micro, medium, large businesses, they will be able to take it to the appropriate authorities, because then we feel that their voices will be heard, at the national levels, and so that it comes down to the smaller businesses, because sometimes, yes, in as much as we'll be able to voice our grievances, they have them. I feel that their voices will be heard faster than ours. So we are counting on them to make sure that they are more like agents of change for small businesses here in Ghana. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gideon, for that. Mr. Twuma Kwabwa, Philomena, are you there? Can you hear me now? Maybe you have another big announcement to make. It looks like Audrey and Philomena have a lot of big announcements, and we like big announcements like that. Philomena, are you there? It appears Philomena is unable to hear me. So let me come to you, Mr. Seth Twuma Kwabwa. It looks like it's not all doom and gloom. There's hope for businesses in Ghana. And how are we hoping to transform the entire business ecosystem? Your parting words, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, for business people, they never think that everything is doom and gloom. There's always an opportunity, and I think that is very important to echo because, I mean, otherwise, we will not be in business. So, really, there's a lot of opportunities in Ghana, and we should take full advantage of it. But then we must be very eager to change the structure of the Ghanaian economy. The structure where we still rely so much on primary or exports of raw materials, bringing oils, and the structure of the Ghanaian economy is not very employment creation economy. Today we have the service sector doing pretty well, but if you look at the industry and agricultural sector, we are not doing that well, and therefore the structure of the economy must change. In changing it, it requires transformation, a total transformation in the agricultural sector. And I've already mentioned the need to link it to industry. Now, if you have a great and industry driving service, then you have job oriented growth. What we have today, a service sector that is doing pretty well, but then the linkage is weak, and therefore you can have so much GDP and growth generated, but it's not linked to the productive sector where you can actually generate the jobs. So the two are very important. I think that for at the SME level, and it also means that for this to work, the ends must connect. All the various agencies, government institutions that are playing one role or the other, they must connect. Sometimes what we find in the policy space is that they have individual good policies, but they are not connecting well enough to really bring the ecosystem to the level where it really improves the business environment for businesses to thrive. So the ends must connect. Agencies and institutions, and even private sector institutions like the banks must all connect. We must have a common objective that we are all aiming at, and everybody plays a role to ensure that we elevate businesses to that level. At the SME level, I always say two key things that drive your business: controllable factors and uncontrollable factors. The controllable ones are the ones that relate to you as a business. So the governance system, the efficiency with which you run your things, how you get your money, whether you are borrowing, your bookkeeping, your marketing strategy. These are all very important factors. There you can use professionals to help and guide you. And in doing so, you can improve it. And those are factors you have control. There are others, however, that you don't have control. And that relates to what I mentioned earlier about the macroeconomic environment. No matter how good you are, it can hit you badly. That's what we are experiencing now. That you don't have control. However, you can influence it. And that's where you influence through associations like AGI. We don't have enough time to go into this. Somebody mentioned that the AGI should take up some of the issues and advocate. There's a lot of advocacy we are doing, but sometimes we also find ourselves in a difficult situation because even the enterprises themselves, they are not appreciating the value of joining such professional groups or associations for all of us to come together so that when we say this, it is impacting big time and it's impacting on business. So the external factors you don't have control, you have to team up with others in groupings, in associations, and then you can influence policy. Because
Okay.
the policymakers, they may have well intentions, but they need to be influenced, they need to be given direction and support. And I think if we do all this, we'll have a good ecosystem for businesses to thrive. So thank you very much.
Do I have your attention, Pastor Ruben? Is it that you want to ask a question? Okay, it doesn't look like. So, Charles, I'll give you the final word on this. I would want to find out from your research also. I'm sure there are some success stories of businesses that have thrived in Ghana despite the challenges. What lessons can be learned from them? And then you can add your final remarks also. And please make highlights a bit of the Ghana Compact as well in going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, MFA. So what I'd like to say is that, first of all, I'm glad that almost all the speakers have been coming from various stakeholder groups within the private sector, have actually amplified the various challenges. And then also some of them have highlighted suggestions in terms of solutions on the way forward in developing the private sector. But what I want to say a little bit also on the compact is that with all that have been said and listening to everyone, it's clear that we all believe that we need a common vision for the private sector, which something has been articulated under the compact. So we're looking at a strong and vibrant, stable, and progressive private sector that is driving economic development in partnership with the state in what we call a free and fair environment. And a number of goals under the compact was set, I mean, around which almost all the stakeholders could actually pick up, interpret, and run with it. And these goals include the following, which I just want to highlight a few. Increasing the number of businesses by ensuring that, entrepreneurs have the opportunity and suitable environment, for example, like market access, market linkages, infrastructure, stable utility services. We've also talked about business development services and all of that. They having access to be able to start and grow real businesses. If you're looking at a progressive private sector. Also, for Ghana as a country, we probably need to update and strengthen our industrial policy through a political consensus to drive an industrialization agenda that is supported by successive government. Because like I mentioned in my earlier presentations, some of the major challenges we have had is that very, very good initiatives and policies have started to really try and resolve some of the challenges that have been identified, but the successive government discontinue that and start new policies or new programs for the private sector. Thirdly, we're looking at to make government's own service delivery systems more responsive to the needs and imperatives of the private sector, and equipped service delivery actors, to enforce regulatory regimes. And this should include like investment, financing, and fiscal regimes, that are designed to support private sector growth. And then investing really in appropriate infrastructure to support the business, especially around industries, if we really want to grow the private sector. And to nurture and grow big private sector winners. And like our AGI rep had mentioned, there are companies that are not just SMEs that really require support to become able competitors with global businesses that are operating here or sending their products into the country. And lastly, to create a free and fair business environment devoid of any political interference and victimization, to allow Ghanaian private sector to truly thrive. So this has been the vision of the compact, and I believe that anytime we've held consultations, we continue to echo these goals and vision. And we are very optimistic, and through our work and through the support of all stakeholders, we believe that the private sector would eventually, become what we're all looking at. Let me take this opportunity to also thank the AGI, who have been our major partners on this particular course when it comes to the private sector on Ghana's compact. They've been tremendous, they've been very supportive, and they've really supported the consultation processes. So thank you so much, and
Okay.
I'm happy we had this program.
Just before you wrap up on that, this compact, are we the free and fair part? There's a way you're asking that business would have that free and fair business environment for. Are we hoping to have the various political parties, since we are going into an election, have all of them adopted this particular compact, for instance?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the vision of the compact, that we will have a political consensus around the various transformation agenda that have been espoused in the Ghana Compact. So it's not just around private sector, but it's around quite a number of areas that we're looking at under the Compact. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. So that'll be your final words, right, Charles? You're done?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. We appreciate it. And I'm sure that you can promise everyone on that there will be another one very soon for people to, really at this time. It looks like 2 hours was not enough for us. Okay, well, so that's how we wrap up today. You're going to say something, Charles? Did I lose you?
No, that's fine.
Okay, all right then. So it looks like we should have some kind of communique from here. I've written a lot down. I've seen that going forward, we should invest in data. There should be some regulatory frameworks that should be in place that we should implement properly. Deliberate actions to stop import. We should increase budgetary allocations to the agri sector, which is from 1 to about 20%. Some inputs, change structure of Ghanaian businesses and the economy. Less importantly, it also came up. Government agencies must connect their policies, because there are different policies that we should all connect. Banks must also connect. SMEs must also connect. There should be macroeconomic stability for businesses to thrive. We've talked about free and fair business environment, increase businesses and market access, update and strengthen industrial policy, amongst others. Also, service delivery of government, and then investing in appropriate infrastructure. These are my takeaways. Maybe we can have transforming Ghana business ecosystem communicate going forward. I would want to thank everyone who's been part of this, from Mr. Charles Odum, who is the head private sector development at ASET. We are grateful for your time. Mr. Sekchuma Kwabwa, CEO of AGI, thank you so much. Philomena Jan is the Director, Policy Planning, Research and Evaluation from the Ghana Enterprises Agency. Thank you so much for being a part. Also to you, Anthony Morrison, CEO of the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. Thank you so much for being a part. Also to you, Audrey Abaka, Head of SME Agency Banking and Partnerships. Thank you so much, and be expecting us. We will be trooping to APSA very soon for that facility that you just put out. And then to you, Gideon Denzo, thank you so much, founder of Gideon's Ghana. We'll be coming to you shortly also for our leather products. And to you, Kimberly Addison, she couldn't stay on, co-founder 57 Chocolate. You know where to go for your chocolates going forward. Once again, on behalf of ASET, we are grateful for your time. And when you have to spread the word, always spread the word about our Ghana Compact, and it will be coming to anywhere near you. Anytime you have an opportunity, please make sure you spread the word about the Ghana Compact as well. Thank you so much. I am Emefa Apau. Many thanks for your company this evening. Let's continue to transform Ghana's business ecosystem. We're grateful for your time. Thank you.